afterwards, but if you agree, we'll turn on the audio tape and we'll get going. Okay? So let's start first with your role here in the stock exchange. Your title is Head of Investment Banking.
Yes.
Investment banking. Tell us a little bit about what you do and how you're related to the SOE market. Okay?
So basically, SSI is the largest security firms in Vietnam right now. We've been established for 18 years. SSI has, all the areas involved in securities that including asset management, brokerage, and there's investment banking as well.
Okay.
For investment banking, we do a full range of services from M&A to privatization of state-owned enterprise,
Okay.
the divestment of state-owned stake in joint stock companies in Vietnam,
Okay.
IPO for private company, of course,
Sure.
and some other financial advisory services.
Okay.
So my role is in charge of the southern division. The whole investment banking team. We have about 12 people here. I've been with SSI for almost 4 years right now.
Okay.
And from the time I joined, we've been doing a few IPOs for state-owned and for private companies. We get involved in some of the major divestment from state stake in joint stock company like Vinamilk, like Big Min Plastic.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is your role here mainly for advisory services or underwriting? I mean, what specifically do
We can provide all scale of services,
Full scale.
underwriting, advisory, but it's just that in Vietnam, underwriting is not very popular
Okay.
compared to other developed markets.
So many advisory services that you'll provide?
Yeah.
Okay.
That
on
including
divestment and privatization?
Privatization
Private and
is a services.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. So let me ask you the first question. And I want to focus first on what you believe is working well in SOE privatization. I want to keep the bad stuff, the negative stuff for the second question. But what do you think, some of the factors that help streamline the process? It could be government regulations, it could be the marketing of the SOEs. It's just off the top of your head, what do you think is working well in making the current process, making it work flow well?
You mean like what can be done to make it better?
No, that's my last question. That'll be my last question.
Or the current process,
Currently.
the positive.
Exactly.
Okay.
Currently, what's helping to streamline the privatization or the IPO process?
I think lots of SOE has very solid base. They have been operating for so long, and they have a brand name. They have very good distribution network.
Okay.
They have local expertise. But somehow when they are still a company owned by the state, the interest between the management team, the employees, and the shareholder, which is the government, is not aligned. Mismatch. And also there's a lot of things, the management team want to do, but they, because of the cucumber, legal process of seeking the state, the major shareholder, the only one shareholder approval make the process harder for them to execute whatever ideas that they have. So the SOE doesn't have, a lot of room to develop. But when they privatize, they become a joint stock company with different shareholders.
Right.
And stay is just one shareholder out of like other shareholders. And sometimes throughout the privatization, the management team gets some shares in the company as well.
Sure,
So the interest has been aligned. So based on my experience, a lot of companies after they privatize, they perform very well.
After privatization, because the interests are aligned.
Yes.
And they get, of course, they get their stock. They get the privatization part of it.
Yes.
Are any other things that you see have worked well so far?
For
in your experience?
privatization.
Correct. SOEs.
I guess the government collect a lot of money from their sides as well. And the most important thing is that even though they still own a major stake in the company, but after privatization, the company has grown like 3 times, 4 times, 10 times. So even though you're selling down your stake, actually your economics interest is actually still a lot larger than it was before privatization.
Sure.
And then it's also, you know, like open the whole economy and inviting foreign investor, you know, capital flow into the country.
Including potentially foreign investment.
Yes.
Potentially, but at least opening up investment. So
Yes.
that's good. All right. How about the methods of valuation of the stock through the IPO? Now, there are some positives and there's some negatives. We've had a lot of discussion with people around book building, around auction. What's working well in valuation? Anything? You can talk about negative in a moment, but what's your impression of the valuation methods?
I think the only thing that make it positive is it's sort of negative and positive.
Sure,
because,
you can talk both. That's okay.
You know, like in Vietnam, the privatization and the valuation of assets is a responsibility of a body, and if it was failed, then it will be individual, civil responsibility, personal responsibility as well.
Okay.
So because of that, you know, people are so scared. They have the tendency to, you know, whatever, you know, set up the price as high as possible.
Overvalue it?
Yes. Only on the biggest, you know, the notable, the biggest, the famous company, then they would have tendency to set the price as high as a high price, so that they don't have like personal responsible for it. And high price, you know, would help the management, the state from losing, you know, asset. But sometimes it just doesn't match with investor demands and the
Because
market
it's too high?
sentiment.
Yeah.
So in recent transaction, you would see like, you know, Zenco 3, they was just IPO like a few months ago. No one want to participate because, you know, the valuation perception is quite high.
Okay.
And then by law, they would have to value by different method. And then there's a lot of time there's a discrepancies between the valuation method. And most of the time, if there's discrepancy, they would pick the highest price. You know, so in a sense, the one point positive is like all the big corporate company that, you know, everyone is eyeing off. Normally, it starts at a very high price, you know, to avoid losing the state money. But all the little one would be, if no one can, then it will be set up, you know, in a price that, you know.
Let's talk some more about valuation. And you can talk positive and negative, okay? From the conversations that we've had, we have found that the auction method seems to be the primary, if not the method of valuation. We've also heard from people about the book build is very popular in the private market. Bringing IPOs private market, right? What are your impressions of the auction versus book build for SOE?
Auctions and book building are process.
Yes. Yes.
So it's a price. How do I say? In auctions, auction is a process and book building is a process.
Exactly.
In auction, you have to determine the price to set up the initial price.
Right, then it goes down. Yeah.
Yes, and then from the initial price, you know, investors just place the bid and get whatever.
Exactly.
You know,
Right.
But for book building, it's a price discovery process.
Exactly. Right.
So you don't have to have the original, you don't have to have like, you know, initial price, but you let the investor come back with demand, and then the supply and demand will match, and then you get the price.
Right. So two different methods.
Yes.
Opinions? SOE again, just SOE.
Yes. I think each one will have pros and cons.
Okay. Talk about pros and cons of each.
Yes. For auctions, you always have a minimum price. So as a seller, if you don't get the minimum price, you would not sell it. And
so sometimes it's good to at least have a floor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's a state asset. They don't know which one gonna be fully responsible for it, right? So there's different government bodies involved, and you know sometimes it's a long process. if you have one single person to be in charge and to be like 100% responsible for it, then you can allow like a price discovery, whatsoever.
Yeah.
But this is a state-owned where you have to go different bodies, and a lot of time like people in different body, they just don't understand the process at all because it's not their expertise, right?
Are you talking on the government side?
Yes, on the government side, they don't have expertise on the financial. They don't even understand how book building is working. And then it's still not one person involved in the whole process. Like in a private company, you have a team of 3 people and they can run the whole process. But here it's like you go to like, I don't know, like analyst, and
Sell-side
then
advisors.
and then the Ministry of Finance, and then often this is a committee. There's a lot of people, and none of them understand the whole process. So, how do they determine on the pricing? So, with the auction process, at least I know there's a process, right? I know there's a minimum price, there's a minimum volume. You just follow the rule, whatever.
Yeah.
And the process, because the process so clear and so easy. So, quite obvious. But it is the con is it's a hurdle for the foreign investor to participate.
You don't mean an auction?
Yes, in an auction, it's a big hurdle for foreign investor to participate.
And why is that?
Because first, the information provided for the auction process is very minimal.
So now we got prospectus.
Yes, the prospectus is very minimal. No
Okay.
due diligence, nothing.
No real due diligence. Okay.
Yes.
Minimal info.
And the second part is, they have to pay deposit, and sometimes this is a hurdle for foreign investor because I'm holding my fund in a USD account and whatsoever. I don't know whether I win or not, but I have to put money, convert into Vietnam dong, and then make the deposit and fill in the application. It's a complicated process.
And that amount it's set, isn't it? That
It's
amount is like
10% of the initial price at
10%
whatever
initial
volume you
price.
want to participate.
So that's a hurdle, yeah.
Yes.
That's good.
And then the next thing is they have to put on the bid, and they don't know whether they win or not. So for a lot of like big funds in the world, like sometimes one fund manager manage like a few $100 million US. They just don't bother to do it.
Interesting. Okay.
And then the third thing is like the successful price is not like one price, but it's like from the top down to the bottom. So for fund managers, they don't want to look like a fool because you don't know what price is gonna win, right? So whether you put like whether it's 25 or 22 or 21, right? And then 25 you win, but the lowest could be like 21. So as the fund manager who put in 25, I look very stupid compared to my peers.
Yeah, I get that.
So so that's those are a lot of
Those
hurdles.
are good issues. And when we talk about specific recommendations, I want to come back to that point later about how can we improve that, particularly for foreign investors. Let me ask your opinion on foreign investment. Important in the SOE market? Because a lot of it you get domestic.
It's quite important.
Quite important. And why is it important? In your opinion?
Right now, you look at the Vietnamese stock market. The retail investor account for 80% of the total trading volume, and then retail investor account for like say 20% of the total. I'm sorry, retail 80% and foreign investor 20%. Although the foreign investor only account for 20%, but it because a few reasons. One is foreign ownership limit, and the second point is there's not a lot of like big tickets in the market available for them to buy yet. So, but even though they all have only 20% in the market, they are dominating. They lead the trend. So retail investor doesn't have that much expertise, so they would see that if foreigners buy more and then invest more, they would kind of follow. So the role of foreign investor is very important in the Vietnam stock market.
Okay, we'll come back to that in recommendations. You talked a little bit about the inadequate information prior, during IPO process, the marketing information. Prospectus is sometimes pretty weak. And you talked about the importance of some due diligence. So you're finding that because the marketing information is substandard, that some of these large strategic investors need to do their own due diligence, and that takes time to do due diligence. Is the process too fast? Some of this IPO.
By law, from the time they announce it to the time you make deposit, it's 21 days or something.
21 days,
I cannot
weeks,
remember correctly.
Right. I think it's about 3 weeks. Yeah.
but due diligence can be different for different types of investor. For strategic investor, they would require a lot of due diligence.
Yeah, right.
For financial investor, they don't need that much due diligence, but at least they have to be able to see the management team. They have to be able to look into the detail of the financial statement, and they need to understand how the projections in the next few years would look like, right? The real one.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
but the state-owned enterprise, normally when they privatize, they are very conservative. They never give out like the real pictures. They only give like very low projection in which they can achieve. Like by closing their eye, they can achieve. And sometimes with that projection, with the initial price, because initial price they have to set at a very high price so that no one have to take responsibility, right? So and then with the projections very low, sometimes there's a mismatch with valuation there. So
Right.
only investors who have been in Vietnam long enough to understand that the SOEs are very conservative, then they have the courage to place in the bid. Investor like from elsewhere in the world, like in London, they come here once a while. They just I don't understand about this company, so I just might not to be.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, really, in order to make a good decision as a strategic investor, it's not just about financials. You have to do, as you said.
Yes.
I think what I heard you say, due diligence on the management, on the company, and is it a good investment for them, not just financially.
Yeah.
So they have to do their. Okay, good. And sometimes 3 weeks is maybe a little bit too limited from beginning to end.
For strategic investor, 3-week due diligence is not good enough.
Too limited. Okay.
Because normally they would have to hire external party to do due diligence, and that process would take at least like
That's a
1 month
good
to 2
point.
months.
That's an excellent point. Okay, good. Okay, let's see. How about the road shows? When there are road shows, prospectus is given out, the SOEs, maybe with the government, there's a road show. What's your impression of the quality of road show?
Actually, I would say for recent transaction, the quality of the roadshow has been improved.
Okay.
Meaning that they for PV oil, for instance, for Bình Sơn and for PV power, in recent transaction they don't have international roadshow, but they have roadshow in Ho Chi Minh City where all the investors are allowed to come. And then the management team would sit there for Q&A. So there's roadshow.
Good.
But again, in roadshow they will only share with you those are public information available in the prospectus. And again, as I said, those are very conservative. A lot of time, too conservative number that would not give the investor the full picture.
Right.
To make the investment decision.
Okay. Excellent point. Let's focus on the most important question, and that is your recommendations to governments in particular, or SOEs, to improve the process. And let's spend some time. This is a very important question because I'll tell you, the Prime Minister wants the most specific recommendations. So feel free to just try and be as specific as you can on recommendations. We did talk about the fact there's a lot of bureaucracy in the government. There's not a lot of centralized. Whatever you want to talk about.
I understand that they're working on a lot of book building right now.
Okay.
And again, even though book building is the most popular process in the world right now, where the price is a discovery process.
Right.
And normally you would often maximize the price, but in order for you to maximize the price, you would have to provide investor enough information to make the decision. So basically, even if the state-owned enterprise they adopt the book building process, whether or not they can't provide investor with enough information to make the price discovery process work is another issue.
Yeah, and I guess it's difficult also to think about. They'll put a prospectus together. Right? That's standard. Everybody does a prospectus. Is there anything else the government can be doing in terms of package of information to help strategic investors? I mean, the Prime Minister said, okay, the marketing information, the prospectus is not sufficient enough. what do you need? Tough question, yeah. If they're not giving sufficient information to make a strategic investment decision because of what you said, how can the government improve that?
You know, because in a private company, the shareholders and the management teams are often like one.
Yeah.
So it's a light interest. In here, you know, there's the government and the management team is two bodies. So I don't know how the interests are aligned in here. You know, to make sure that, you know, the information is provided, like in a sense. Because the management team would surely understand about a company and they can provide all the information the investor need. But whether or not they're willing to share the information to the extent that, you know, at the privatization, I don't know.
Are you finding that some of the SOE management are resistant to privatization even though the government is pushing them to privatize? Because they're not motivated maybe to?
It's
what
not
do you
that
think?
I would not say they are resistant. It's just that, you know, they've been in SOE for a long time and for them, you know, I'm not sure they would be comfortable, you know, sharing that much information about a company to an investor.
Right.
So.
Okay. Are they afraid of losing control after privatization? Some management teams
Yes,
in the company,
somehow.
maybe it's like, oh my God, I'm giving up, you know, ownership of the company. And,
Yes. That yeah.
Okay. So you talked about book building. You think, if I'm hearing you correctly, that the government should try and increase the potential to use book building in SOE? You're saying that's a good process and it should be.
It's a good process.
And it should be used more?
It is a good process, proven. But how to apply it successfully in state-owned enterprise needs to be discussed in detail.
Excellent. Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's a good process over, you know, in all the world could be bring and then make it successful in an SOE.
Yeah, but at least look at it and see what the potentials are for it.
They can do a trial, you know, and give it to companies with the most capable management.
That's true. See if they can build that
and
the
see
process.
if they can execute like what, for instance, like SCIC divestment in Vinamilk.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
SCIC is they very understanding about the process, and Vinamilk themselves is expert in financial. So both the government body and the company are knowledge enough, and they have capable people. Then somehow, you know, that can be tested and working.
As a book build trial.
Yeah. But in a company that has never privatized before, and then you bring the book building process, then you need to make sure that the people in the process, including the government official who's in charge and the management team of the company who's in charge, fully understand the process.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Right.
Yes, I understand. On the government side, we're talking about recommendations here. Do you believe that the government that's involved in SOE needs to have better advisory services, a sell-side advisory service? They're not getting enough sell-side professional advice? And if so, would you recommend that there be more effort for the government to have an advisor or pay for an advisor?
All the private company that I'm working with, they hire a professional advisor, local and global, and they're willing to pay.
SOE?
No, private company.
Private, exactly, right.
They're willing to pay like decent fee.
Yeah.
Because, you know, those people know the process and they guide the company through. And sometimes if you want to do an international offering, you have to have international lawyer. You have to have like the international banker as well as local.
Right, very important.
So, you know, it's important. Right now, the government is the way the government structure to hire advisor is very funny. So they have a cap of like $500 million. So
For advisory service payment?
no,
or what do you mean?
about $500 million, which is 25,000. Then you have to do like an auction process to select an advisor, and that process takes like 6 months because you have to announce it like to everybody and wait for them to submit with credentials. You have to hire advisor to create the credentials. To find out financial advisor. It's like cyclical process. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
And then when we submit and then they require all sorts of documents and proof, and then the application itself is like this thick. I don't think it's valid, or I don't think anyone would take a look at it. So
what can we do to improve that? That's always a tough question, right?
Yeah.
This is what's bad, not working, but what would the government need to hear to change that? So there's more funds available for whatever, paperwork funds. If you don't have any specific thing, then that's okay. But I think what I'm hearing you say is that the money that's allocated and the time that the SOEs have to apply, it's too much, the applications are too big, and that needs improvement. We agree on that, yeah?
yeah, it need improvement.
Okay, excellent. And
And
how
I
much?
think,
How much is the fund again? Is it $25 million?
25,000 US dollar.
25,000.
500 million.
Okay. Oh, 500
If it's
million.
above 500 million dong, then you would have to have like a public process. I think they're revising it now to change it to 3 billion instead of like 500 million dong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Other recommendations, other things to help streamline the process. We talked about book bill. We talked about advisory services. Anything else come to mind?
For
Improvement.
deposit, for instance.
Talk about that. Yep.
Instead of making it like 10% of the initial price, I think they should make it a small lump sum. Because the purpose is to get investor committed, right? Then you don't have to make them transfer that much money to be committed. Even a few 100,000 max would be good, right? Because if I'm a big investor in like all the big investors like Fidelity, like Wellington, it's just a word. If I send an email and it's a firm bid, it's a firm bid. So it's not that I'm gonna change or whatsoever. So in a 5 million or in a 4 billion transaction, do you need them to put in 400 million US dollar as a deposit when they don't know whether they win?
That's right. Yeah.
So
What happens to the deposit if they don't win? If they don't get in? And
they would be
secure it?
refunded like
They'll
a
be
full
refunded.
refund.
But it's still a big chunk of money.
It's
If
a
you
big
do-
chunk of
On a
money.
big offering, 10% could be a lot of money.
Yes. So if they make fine, if they do the auction process, if they want to do deposit, then it should not be 10%, but it should be 10%, but capped to whatever the amount. That's to encourage investor, participate more.
Okay, excellent.
And then the next thing is pricing for the auction. It could be not like the style like from top to bottom. One they decide the minimum price to win, right?
Yeah.
Then it's like book building. Everyone gonna get in same price.
So just set the minimum.
Yes, you set the minimum. Or somehow, not sure, but they can
So be a little more flexible in the auction process. If you set a floor during the
you
auction,
set
the
an
floor,
initial price,
set the initial price.
and then you count from the highest to the lowest winning. But then everyone gonna pay the average price or something. May not be working because it's an auction process. So
how do you improve the auction process? So I understand. What are you suggesting the change should be in auction? Set the minimum. Should there be a change in the process of auction?
I was thinking about like everyone gonna get into the same price, but I think maybe it not be very logical. But if everyone can get in the same price, then investor would be more happily to commit. So what I suggest may work or may not. They have to figure out is it's still go from the top.
Right.
to whatever the lowest price to win.
Yeah, right.
But whoever from the lowest price to the top, they would pay the average price. So one price instead of like, whatever the price you put, you pay.
Shoot for sort of an average price. In other words, they have to maybe take a look at the auction process.
Yeah.
Maybe it has areas for improvement.
And then the initial price as well. So right now the initial price is determined by company with license in Vietnam for valuation. So these are only a few selected
not many.
companies, not many. Like even us, we don't have license to do so.
So maybe taking a closer look, better look at how that initial price is set and improving that.
Yeah.
Sometimes is the initial price too high, maybe in the initial price?
Or maybe the process for determine the initial price has to be reconsidered.
Okay.
Instead of having like just one valuator, they can have like for instance, you can set up like criteria.
Yeah.
For company with market cap like from below 50 million, you have one. Like for 50 to 500 million, you maybe have like 3 to 4 of them.
Mean pricing?
Yeah, pricing.
Interesting.
Or above 500 million, then you may have like like from 50 to like 200, maybe 200 to 500, maybe 3, and at a certain point you may have to hire like international Big Four accounting firm, for example. They have that valuation service they can provide.
Very interesting. Good recommendation. Anything else come to mind at all on recommendations?
Yeah, I think
That's pretty good, right?
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking right now.
That's very good.
But I was really like thinking about like how the book building process can, because a lot of people would recommend the book building process for the state-owned enterprise, and based on my experience, I don't think they can execute it.
Who's the head?
The companies.
The companies have difficulty executing it.
Yes. The companies and the government body who is in charge would have difficulties in executing the book buildings.
And again, tell us why again one more time. Why would they have difficulty executing?
Because the management team who do not have any idea about the financial industries and about valuations and about what's the book building process. So they just simply do not have knowledge.
Okay. Do you think they can get knowledge? Can we reach a point where we can educate SOEs and government on book building to the point where we can move in that direction? It's a matter of knowledge, isn't it?
Yes, you can train them, but who will do that?
Yeah, that's right. Who's going to pay for it, right?
Yes, if you want to do it, then you hire professional one who understand, financial advisor.
Right, and that comes with a cost. I don't know. Maybe the government needs to set aside some money for advisory services. That's something that came up in some of our interviews. The government needs to understand and be able to have a pool of money that's sufficient to cover advisory services. Maybe.
Or they have to be very specialized.
Or specialized.
It's not that every industry, every minister would have companies, and people at each minister would be in charge of privatization. So for their ministry, that would be tough.
Yeah.
So if they do that, that's fine. But then the department who is really in charge under that ministry has to have has to be very knowledgeable. And there's a lot of young, capable overseas students studying right now. It's just a matter of whether they can blend it in and work within the government body with.
That's a good point. Maybe too much spread out decision making. Maybe have more central specialization on the SOE privatization. That's a good point. I think that's all the questions I have. I would ask, what I do at the end of every interview is if I send you an email at the end. First of all, thank you again. But if you know of anybody else, particularly in the areas of law firms or maybe SOEs.
Maybe I can recommend you to YKVN.
I don't know them, so.
YKVN, Mr. Giang, who is the managing partner. YKVN, which is the biggest.
VN?
Yeah, biggest law firm in Vietnam.
Okay, and who's the contact person?
Mr. Giang, who is the management.
Can you do me a favor and write that down for me? Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi?
Here.
Okay.
But I need to contact him first.
Yeah, I
see
was
if
gonna
he's
say,
aware.
it would be a tremendous help to us, because we're having difficulty with contacting some law firms and having them be part of it. If you could, if you wouldn't mind, I'll send you an email later today, and if you can contact him, and help say, you know, we're gonna be contacting him for a possible interview, that would really be a big help.
Okay,
I
yeah.
really appreciate
Let
that very
me
much.
talk to him, see if
Okay.
he's interested, then
That-
I
that would
can
be great.
refer to you.
And I'll send you an email just as a communication back to me, back and forth.
Okay.
Anyway, I just, thank you so much. Really.
You're welcome.
It's
Hope that
very
I can help.
valuable information, really, really great. And I guess I don't need this anymore. I'll leave that there. Thank you
bring
for
it
the
with you.
water. I could, well, that's true, yeah. Do you have a garbage here? I'll throw the straw away from me.
Yes, I can throw. I can help you.
Okay.
I have it here.
Back up. Turn tape on.
Yeah.